Continue our chapter first farmer. In that beginning of cultivation, agricultural production, the transition from hunter-gatherer's life to the beginning of cultivation was a very slow process drawn over thousands of years. Beginning of cultivation is also the beginning of the Neolithic age. It spanned through 10,000 to 8,700 before Common Era. It may vary to some extent from place to place. This period marked the beginning of domestication of animal along with the beginning of cultivation. Barley was the main crop in this period. Other crops were wheat and flax seeds. The last glacial period in the history of our planet came to an end at about 12,000 to 11,000 years ago. It was the beginning of new epoch or era which is known as Holocene. With the beginning of the Holocene, glaciers began to melt and water volume in the water bodies like river and ocean increased. As a result, animals and vegetation for food increased. This period had also witnessed extinction of species of gigantic animals like mammoth. However, species of fish and small animals like goat, sheep, deer, etc. were amply available for food. The heavy tools of Paleolithic time were of no use either for fishing or for hunting small animals. The technique of removing long stone blade had been developed in the Upper Paleolithic age. In the Mesolithic age, the same technique was used and blades as small as fingernails were removed to make tools. These blades, known as microliths as we know, were either hefted. Hefted means to fix with the help of rope and gum on the tip of wooden bone shaft or in the grooves made on those shafts. Thus, modified tools like fishing, harpoons, spears, and arrows could be made. Ample cereals and fruits grown naturally were available. Tools like sickle and scythe, like they were hooks, were made by hefting microliths for harvesting the cereals and fruits. Thus, the technique evolved, the technique of hunting and obtaining food improved. Food became available in plenty. This resulted in making the Mesolithic people stay at one place for a longer time of the year. Harvesting of naturally grown cereal led them into systematic cultivation. The technique of agricultural and pastoral operation, that is animal husbandry, continued to evolve. The nature of these operations is such that the farmer is compelled to settle down permanently near the cultivated land. This is how the villages were settled on a permanent basis. This prepared the ground for the rise of the Neolithic age. This transition was drawn over the prolonged period. Nevertheless, considering radical changes in the way of life during the Neolithic age, the Australian archaeologist Gordon Childe coined the term Neolithic Revolution. Now let's continue our next point. First, farmers of India. We're talking about Neolithic. Let's study what you mean by Neolithic. Neo means new and lithic means stones. Neolithic age got its name because of the stone tool of completely new types. It includes short and long heads of axe made of polished stone and polished stone rings. The axe head were hefted on wooden shaft and used for cutting trees, scraping wood to give it a desired shape, etc. It was essential to clear jungle by felling trees in order to obtain land for cultivation and settlement. The new tools came handy for this work. The evidence of Neolithic period found at Mehergarh came into existence around 7000 before Common Era. The site is situated in Balochistan. This site is also great importance among the Neolithic villages in the Indian subcontinent established by the first farmer. The Mehergarh farmer cultivated barley and wheat. There is another site of a Neolithic village that is contemporary to Mehergarh. This site was found at Lahuradeva in Sant Kabirnath district of Uttar Pradesh. In Maharashtra, the Mesolithic man existed during 10,000 to 4,000 before Common Era. He stayed in the natural caves and under rock shelters. He moved along the river banks. He made microliths from siliceous stone, which mean different types of stone such as agate. However, no evidence of purely Neolithic site have been found in Maharashtra. The Chalcolithic period were the first farmer of Maharashtra. Inamgaon in the Shirur Taluka of Pune district is an important site of the village of Chalcolithic farmer in Maharashtra. Next is agricultural settlement in that organization and administration. Researchers have attempted to estimate the population of Neolithic villages with the help of various mathematical and statistical models. With the help of those estimates, we may gather some idea with regard to population composition of those villages. When Mesolithic people were witnessing the transition from nomadic, semi-nomadic life to settled life, there could have been 25 to 40 people in any given groups. Life depend on regular cultivation would need that number to increase at least to 50. A village with at least a population of 100 could meet the need of individual member who would be completely depend on agriculture and animal husbandry. Neolithic villages were small in size, permanently occupied dwelling, mostly around huts, were characteristic of these villages. Other than these dwellings, some places in the central part of the village were perhaps used as common storage places of food grains and other things. This internal settlement pattern of the village indicates that the transaction related to the food production was centrally controlled. According to a hierarchical change of power, position must have been established. At the same time, other social norms were also established. For example, boundaries of individual household, families, ownership of land, food production to meet the need of individual household, family, and rules of kingships. The tradition of imparting training of technique for family skill of production to the younger member is supposed to have begun as early as Neolithic time. In other words, it may be said that hierarchical social and family structure and the concept of inheritance have its roots in the Neolithic times. The culture known as Jomon culture of Japan was a Mesolithic culture which has yielded evidence of pottery making. Except this example, everywhere in the world pottery making seems have to be begin in the second phase of Neolithic period. Pottery making along with polished stone tool is supposed to be an essential characteristic of this period. The earthen pots were used for the purpose of cooking, serving food and for storage. In the beginning, these pots were handmade, and in the later stage, wheel-made pottery was also introduced. The Neolithic pottery in the beginning was in monochrome, which means single color, with a burnished, which means polished by rubbing with a wooden or stone tool. The surface is also carved design. Also, the technique of stamping and applique work, that is pasting wet clay ribbons and making pattern on them. Gradually, Neolithic people began to decorate their pot with painted design. Thus, in the later half of Neolithic age, pottery making had become an art that required special skill. To master the art of pottery making, one need to possess knowledge of following things. First, to know the source of clay of excellent quality, to manage to obtain clay, to knead and prepare the clay for the pottery production, to able to turn the pot to the desirable shape, to have artistic skill for decorating the pottery, to know the technique of baking pottery at right temperature, approximately 850 to 900 Celsius. The class of skilled potters equipped with essential knowledge of all stages of pottery making was already established in the second phase of Neolithic period. Ancient pottery can throw light on various aspects of ancient culture. With the help of pottery, we can also know about the contact of the residents of the place with the other culture. This period, that is Neolithic period, also saw a rise of other skilled artisans classes based on specialized craft. It is apparent that the skill of making beads of various types was acquired by Neolithic artisans from the beginning. They made beads of various types of siliceous stone and chunk shells. Excavation at Neolithic site yielded beads, waste material cast away during beads making process, faulty and incomplete beads, and the tools used by the bead makers. The following are the stages of making beads. To know the source of siliceous stone and chunk shell. Second, to obtain the raw material. Third, to transport the raw material to the manufacturing site. Fourth, to manufacture finished bead from the stone of irregular shape and the core of chunk shells. The artisan have to be conversant with every stage of bead manufacturing. In brief, agricultural production as well as production of agricultural tools, pottery, beads, etc. is a chain of various skill-based operation which are completed step by step. It is a complex system which call for systematic division of labor and training of people for various skill. This process lead to craft specialization and create various class of skilled artisans. Second last point, trade and transport. The nomadic, semi-nomadic groups of Mesolithic people had a system of barter among themselves. The wheel was not yet invented. It means that the means of mechanical transport were not available to them. In the later half of Neolithic age, people had started using beasts of burden for transporting goods. Tools like axe, scraper, and seashell enable Neolithic people to cut trees and to work on wood. Most probably, round-shaped pieces of wooden logs were used as wheels. Such round pieces can easily gain momentum. The Neolithic people invented wheel, and the technology that had developed so far underwent a revolution. The Neolithic people began to produce wheel-made pottery. The wheel technology made it possible to produce pottery on mass scale. The invention of wheels also made it possible to obtain raw material from distant places in much lesser time. It became easier to send the finished goods to distant markets where it was in more demands. It helped to develop trade and transport on a greater scale. Last point, beginning of urbanization. After settling down at one place for longer time, a feeling of ownership arose among the Neolithic people. This feeling was focused on their individual dwelling and the piece of land cultivated by them. along with its awareness of collective landholding and the village boundaries became prominent. Thus, it was felt that the village community had a natural right over the immediate territory around the village periphery. This kind of awareness of natural right over a particular region is known as territoriality. Rules and social norms were created in order to manage the collective resources, water source, craft depend on it, trade and community life, etc. Consequently, rituals and their detail gain importance. The need of managing and keeping record of trade, ritual, writing system and administrative machinery developed. It gave rise to administrative center. Such administrative center attract large number of population which include official people from various occupation. As a result, periphery of the original settlement kept expanding and cities came into being. This began the process of urbanization in Neolithic age. The evidence of Neolithic period in the Palestinian city of Jericho on the river bank of Jordan. It first settled as a village in 9000 before Common Era. It was one of the first Neolithic permanent settlement. It started getting organized into a well-knit society at about 8000 before Common Era. The village at this time had a protective wall around it, complete with a watchtower. This is undoubtedly an evidence of an organized society. The beginning of cultivation at Jericho and in the surrounding region began earlier than the establishment of the village by a few centuries. Its evidence has been discovered at Gilgal, a site near Jericho. A fire-stricken house at Gilgal was excavated, which yielded bone remains of pigs. After carrying out laboratory analysis of these pigs' remains, scientists have concluded that the Neolithic people at Gilgal had systematically planted pigs cutting. This stands to be the first attempt of plant cultivation.